Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. It's news that's nightly about the Redskins. Welcome to the Redskins Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, obviously, Redskins left tackle, or former Redskins left tackle, Trent Williams, is what it feels like, reported to the Redskins organization yesterday. And there were reports flying around, and you know how it is when something happens initially, everyone's rushing to try to get the story, and a lot of times those people get the story wrong. They're trying to get the information out first. We're in a first society, and so everybody wants to be able to lay claim to they had it first. And so yesterday, everyone was talking about Trent Williams showed up, he passed the physical, they expect him not to play, and that's what everybody ran with, including myself. Turns out he never took a physical yesterday. And that, the Redskins expected him to play, but there was a chance, and J.P. Finley had said this early in the morning, that there was a chance that the Redskins would look to put Trent Williams on a specific list that would stop him from being active for the next 3 weeks. There's some significance to that. I'll get to that in a second. But so Trent actually didn't take a physical yesterday. He took the physical today. And I was reading a tweet from the pro football doctor, David Chow, and he said, look, I've taken over 2 decades worth of physicals in my career. I've never once had any player have to put on a helmet to complete a physical. So he said, this sounds really bogus to me. Obviously it is. On both sides and parties' parts. I think that Trent Williams and his agent really flubbed this one. And they're going to regret this. And Trent may ultimately fire his agent behind how this all goes down. Meanwhile, the team effed this up 6 ways to Sunday. We all know that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show as well. But they are also looking for a way to really hurt Trent one final time before they do ultimately try and deal him in this offseason. And so it's both parties trying to exert their will over the other. Trent thinks he's being smart by showing up when he did. The Redskins think that they are in a situation of leverage. Trent's like, I'm not playing for you guys. And, oh, by the way, my head hurts where I had the surgery. This helmet doesn't fit right. No, I can't play. And the Redskins are going to oblige by that. You can't tell someone that they're in a position to play. We saw it with the Kelechi Osemele situation with the Jets, where they thought he could play through an injury. He had several doctors tell him he needs surgery. He opted for the surgery. The Jets got mad. They decided to part ways with him. So you can't tell a player that they can or can't play. If they say they're in some discomfort, you have to go with what that player says. Trent says his helmet is uncomfortable, and so they have to go with that. And so he failed his physical because of a helmet defect. Again, let's be honest, all right? Trent Williams, and this is the thing, and I kept it as simple as possible when it came to this whole helmet situation. It's really simple. Had Trent been traded, would we have this issue with, say, the Cleveland Browns or the Houston Texans? Would he have gotten to their facility? Oh, man, this helmet doesn't fit right, and he would have failed the physical? Hell no. He'd be in uniform on the field practicing today. So just keep it as simple as possible. He doesn't want to play. The Redskins are in no rush to put him on the field because they're looking to recoup an entire season worth of salary, and they want him to still have 2 years left under his contract. So let's get to that. So there was a story by ProFootballTalk.com yesterday by Mike Florio, who I can't stand. He doesn't like the Redskins. He always takes shot at the Redskins every chance he gets. So I really don't fool around with Mike Florio or ProFootballTalk.com. But in this particular situation, nobody really knew what the hell was going on yesterday, and they seemed to have a little bit of information that no one else seemed to have. So there was an article that Mike Florio wrote pretty much explaining the whole situation of why Trent actually showed up yesterday. So, and I'm going to try to explain this the best way possible as far as how I interpreted everything that was said to me or everything that was stated in that article and how I interpreted it. I'm going to try to relay it to you. So follow me if you can. So essentially, Trent had to show up yesterday before the trade deadline commenced. Why? Because had he shown up after the trade deadline, he then would have had to been reinstated by the Redskins and the league. He would have been officially, I guess, off the roster, if you want to call it as such, but he would have had to been reinstated. All right. So in order to avoid that, he had to show up before the end of the trade deadline, which was somewhat of a, I guess, a marker of sorts. And so it was reported yesterday by JP Finley that Trent showed up around like 2 o'clock, which the trading deadline wasn't over until 4. So he probably got wind of the fact that he wasn't going to be traded, and he understood that he needed to show up. And so him and his agent thought they had figured this thing all out, and they had put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And so they were going to show up so they wouldn't have to be reinstated, so that they could just, show up, take the physical, whether they decided they wanted to play or not, or, fail the physical, whatever the case may be, but actually be on the roster for 8 games. If you're on the roster for at least 8 games, then you are pretty much in the clear when it comes to having that year accrued towards free agency. Now, if you're on the roster less than 8 weeks, there's an argument to be made that you haven't been on the team long enough to accrue that full season. Now, we all know the rule is that if you're on the roster for at least 6 games, then you can accrue the season. But there can be an argument made by the team that if you're not there for at least half of the games, which is 8, that you haven't been there long enough, and that you could see a situation where they could go to an arbitrator, and the arbitrator could rule in the favor of the Redskins that there was conduct detrimental to the team, and that Trent wasn't there long enough and such, and so that he would have to still have 2 years remaining on his contract. So in order to avoid that, Trent showed up, was okayed by the team, checked out physically, and was in good mental and physical shape and health. And so he was here by his standards and his agent standards on time. But this is the caveat that they didn't take into consideration, and why Trent ultimately may have effed this all up. And he may be probably upset at his agent because they didn't kind of dot all their I's and cross all of their T's. The Redskins have the opportunity to put Trent Williams on a list. And remember, I talked about this yesterday. I said, the Redskins are going to find a way to put Trent Williams on a list. I told you, I don't know which one it is, but they're going to put him on a list that's going to stop Trent Williams from playing and potentially earning his money and accruing this season. Because Trent thought he was going to show up, get the accrued season, and all would be fine and dandy. But the Redskins have another trick up their sleeve. They have a list that they can put him on. I think it's the exemption list, where he's going to be out for 3 weeks. All right, that exemption list gives them the opportunity, the exempt list gives them the opportunity to put a player there for 3 weeks. And they've already designated Trent Williams to the exempt list. So what that means is that Trent won't be eligible to play for the Washington Redskins for 3 games. All right. Now, if it's games, then Trent's screwed. If it's weeks, Trent's still okay. It'll still be 6 weeks. All right. But if it's games, Trent's screwed, and he won't be eligible to come back and suit up for the Redskins until week 12, meaning he will have missed his window of 6 games. He would have only participated in 5 games, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Well, he wouldn't be eligible because it's week 9. Redskins don't play in week 10, so he wouldn't be eligible to come back until week 13, which would put him in a situation weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Only 5 games he would have been on the roster and have been eligible, which would put him under the threshold necessary to gain the accrued season. So the Redskins, Bruce Allen, Dan Snyder, have another trick up their sleeve. I think Trent may have misstepped here. He would have needed to have come back last week if it's 3 games. Now, if it's 3 weeks, he'll be fine. He'll be eligible by week 12, and he'll be here for 6 games, and all will be fine and dandy. So there are some particulars to this thing. If it's games, Trent, and the article said games. So if it is in fact games, which I trust Mike Florio in this particular situation, that means he can't be eligible until week 13 because, again, the Redskins don't play in week 10. They have a bye week. So he won't be eligible for week 9, week 11, or 12. that means he'll only be eligible for 5 games, which means he would have not met the threshold of 6 games, meaning he will not accrue that season. So it seems like Trent may have done himself no favors here, but as I mentioned before, it's easier to trade a player with 2 years left on a contract versus 1, but Trent was looking to coop the money and the year of accrued season. Why? Because, again, Trent's probably going to be looking for new money wherever he goes, so whether it's 1 year, 2 years left on his deal, it really doesn't matter at this point, because remember, this entire time I'm saying, if I'm Trent, I'm not coming back because I want my 2 years left on the contract to be easily moved. It's easier to move a guy with 2 years left versus 1, but Trent, he really doesn't care about that because wherever he goes, he's looking for new money. So they're going to either add to the 1 year or 2 years he's got left on his current deal, or they're going to rip that up, give him a new 3-year deal and call it a day. So either way, he really could care less about 1 year versus 2 years, but it's more about the Redskins having control over his contract, because what if the Redskins can't find a suitor for them, for Trent Williams, or can't find a deal that they like, that they think is worthy of moving Trent Williams, and they decide to go through this whole song and dance again? He would still have 2 years remaining. He will still be in the same spot that he was in last summer. So he wants to get 1 year closer to free agency just in case the Redskins try some old BS. So this situation can get a lot more messier than it already is. But stay tuned as the Redskins turns. It's not done yet, as there will be more to go with this situation. But old man Bill Callahan said that Trent failed his physical because of the helmet situation, and he says it's a daily thing, which, again, what are we talking about here? Like, Trent doesn't want to play. They don't want Trent to play, and so I think there's a mutual impasse here that I think is going to end up working in the favor of the Redskins when it's all said and done. I think Trent Williams might have missed his opportunity to really finally stick it to the Redskins. I think the Redskins, Daniel Snyder, Bruce Allen, are going to get the final laugh when it's all said and done here with Trent Williams. And you know what? They've had a lot of time to figure out their next move, and they may have fudged it. That's on them. That's no one else's fault but their own, and we'll see how this whole situation unfolds. But as we go on to in other news, Bill Callahan, old man Bill, stepped to the podium today as Redskins interim head coach and talked about a number of things. Obviously, most of the questions were revolving around Trent Williams, and so he had to kind of navigate his way through all of those questions. Not really interested in what he said to Trent and the conversations that were had there, because Bill Callahan has no weight. He carries no weight in this situation. Nothing Bill Callahan says to Trent Williams is going to get him to come back and play. So at the end of the day, no one, I don't care, but obviously the media members are looking to try to get something out of Bill Callahan that he just simply wasn't going to give them. And so the more pertinent information was the fact that Case Keenum, still in concussion protocol, and Dwayne Haskins took all of the first team reps. So that was the biggest takeaway from Bill Callahan speaking. And there's actually audio of Dwayne speaking, which I will play a little bit later on. And so for those of you who aren't aware and haven't been following me on socials, I sent out a message earlier today pretty much telling you guys we're going 2 for Tuesdays, or 2 for Wednesday, okay? 2 shows tonight. Redskins Nightly News, and then afterwards from 7 to 8, we're going live, the Redskins Report, and on that show, I'm going to play Dwayne Haskins' interview today after practice, so you can kind of get a sense of where he is. And I also have another story that was written about Dwayne Haskins, and I want to share one quote from that story that I think is really pertinent, and it kind of dovetails off of what I was talking about yesterday when I was referring to the Redskins organization slowly but surely destroying Dwayne Haskins. Hopefully he's mentally tough enough to overcome all of the obstacles that this organization puts in front of him. And so I'll have that on the Redskins Report for you before we open up the phone lines and allow you guys to talk about this football team and whatever you want to talk about, whether it's Dwayne Haskins, Trent Williams situation, or the offseason, or the Buffalo Bills game, whatever the case may be. I will set the table for you guys and we'll talk about that. But Dwayne did speak, and we'll have that on the Redskins Report. But back to Callahan, he talked about Case Keenum, still in the concussion protocol, as I mentioned. So Dwayne took all of the first team reps in practice, and he also talked about, getting ready for the Buffalo Bills and how they feel like they can win the football game, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, it was a press conference dominated by Trent Williams talk. So not a lot of pertinent information came out of Bill Callahan's presser. Generally, we get 2 or maybe 3 pieces of good information from him. It was really reduced to 1, and that was Dwayne Haskins taking all of the first team reps and how he performed on the day. But when you look at something that I want to touch on before we get out of here is I want to rehash this once more, and then we'll move on. You know, I don't want to continue to beat a dead horse here, but the Redskins really flubbed this whole Trent Williams trading situation. Remember, I talked about how you got to strike while the iron's hot, and that the Browns were desperate 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, and how the Redskins could have gotten a first-round pick. The report out there is that the Redskins were offered a second-round pick, and that's what the Browns were offering, and that was their final stance. Well, that's because they're 2-5 now, and that would have been my stance if I'm the Browns. Like, get out my damn face. All this time I've been offering you a first-round pick. You shut me down. You wouldn't even take some of my calls. But now that all of a sudden you're trying to save face with your fan base, now all of a sudden you want to pick up the phone and you want to call me and see what it takes to get a deal done. No, get out of here. The Redskins, and this is why I said the Redskins could have gotten, and for me, the conversation would have started with the first-round pick. The Redskins could have gotten a first-round pick this entire time. They effed this situation up 6 ways to Sunday, and so you're going to hear a little bit about that here. I got a piece of audio for you that I'm going to close the show with, and we'll be able to expound upon this on the Redskins report, along with the Dwayne Haskins audio and the one quote that I have from a story written about Dwayne Haskins and him potentially getting a start on Sunday and really moving forward. But we'll talk about all those things and then some on the show later. But what I want to do is leave you with this audio. It's about a good 6 minute clip or so of the Yahoo Sports NFL podcast. It's Charles Robinson and Therese Paylor talking about the whole situation with 2 of the most dysfunctional organizations in all of football. And really, they are the 2 most dysfunctional organizations in all of football, and their records kind of show that. And it's funny because everyone looks at the Dolphins as the worst team, but they're not the worst organization, okay? That's reserved for the Redskins and the Bengals, and you'll hear why they're so bad, and you'll hear why they're the laughingstocks of the league, and you'll hear why these teams are going to continue to be really bad because of how they're run. And I've always talked about Bruce Allen trying to play us for fools, treating us as if this is 1985, like we're stuck in the 80s or the 70s, back when his dad was the Redskins head coach. He for some reason doesn't understand where we are in today's society and how technology works and how we're pretty much in tune to everything that goes on. And so this audio that I'm going to play for you essentially talks about how, Bruce Allen is stuck in that 1980s, 1970s way of thinking, and how this organization is being run into the ground, and how the Redskins effed up an opportunity to get a first-round pick for Trent Williams and probably should have pulled the trigger, as we've talked about for quite some time. But I'll leave you with that audio as we get out of here. Hey, I thank you guys for joining me on the Redskins Nightly News. Remember, we've got skin in the game. Why? Because we're Skins fans for life. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'll see you guys a little bit later on. I'll make sure we're out of there by 8 o'clock so you can get to the World Series. I know a lot of you are Nationals fans, and so I want to have you in front of your television set in enough time to get comfortable, get your beverage, whatever you need to be ready for the Nationals Game 7 versus the Houston Astros. So 7 to 8 will be live, the Redskins report. I'll have some more audio for you, but I'll leave you with this piece of audio here from the Yahoo Sports NFL podcast. I'll see you guys a little bit later on.
That said, I want to ask you about one thing. Another name that we heard today, and that, I wrote a story about previously, and it's been a complete show. The Cleveland Browns are furious.
As they should be. You damn right. You damn right. They should be.
Furious with the Washington Redskins over Trent Williams. And here is why. Had a chance to talk to somebody today, and he just straight up said, 6 weeks ago, the Redskins could have had a first-round pick from the Cleveland Browns for Trent Williams. It could have happened. If they wanted a first-round pick, they could have happened. Instead, they did what bad front offices do, and they sat on an asset for 6 weeks and then decided to put themselves on the clock at the last moment and go, hey, guess what? maybe we'd take a first-round pick for this guy. You know what the Browns did? When they heard all of a sudden this guy's available, they were like, called these. Yeah, bingo, that's it. We called these guys so many times. You know what? Kiss my ass. We are not calling you now. Like, we already went through that. That is how upset the Browns were about this whole situation with Trent Williams.
Just ask yourself, like, if you're like an NFL front office, how do you not just like the default as to whether or not you should do something should be asking yourself, what would Belichick do? Is there any chance that Bill Belichick would have just let this premium asset sit out half the year?
Nope.
You know what would have happened with Bill Belichick? They would have got a chance that he didn't want to play for you in July or June. And you know what? He would have been dealt, and no one would have known. He just would have been traded, and then the stuff would have came out. You don't wait until it becomes a thing, and then when it becomes a thing, you don't wait till you start 1-7 to put him on the block and start having talks 2 days before the deadline. Right. A complete atrocity in every way, a complete train wreck. I feel bad for Washington fans, bro.
Yeah, it's awful, and that's the one thing about the trade deadline is. We come to find out who the bad front office, like it exposes bad front office.
Oh, it
really does. So you have Washington sit there forever on an asset, and then at the last second they want to deal him, and everyone's like, "Yeah, screw you." And then you have Cincinnati. Cincinnati sits there and they bench Andy Dalton. They benched Andy Dalton now instead of a week ago. You know what? Here's the thing: if you had benched Andy Dalton a week ago, guess what? Any teams that might be at all in a market for a veteran the rest of the season, they would call and go, "Hey,
right.
Maybe we can get something for Andy. You don't have to pay the remainder of the salary this year, and then we just cut him in the offseason." But instead, the stupid-ass Bengals go, let's sit here and not do anything, and then we're going to bench him now, and it's too late for anybody to make calls. It's too late to inquire, including their other teams. It's remarkable to me that we're still in this sort of archaic phase of doing what? What's the phrase? What do teams do? So this Trent Williams, I'm going to ask you because you know what it is. What was the point of the Washington Redskins sitting on Trent Williams? What were they trying to do? They were trying to
prove they couldn't be bullied. They were trying to prove a point. They were trying to show that the players can't dictate what we're going to do. Yep. Well, guess what, guys? It's 2019.
Right.
Okay? Yes. Players get it. Players understand now more. Ezekiel Elliott basically shook down the Cowboys after skipping all the training camp. Basically, that's what happened. This isn't the NBA. The NFL will never let it be the NBA. But please understand, players understand their value. They get it. You kind of have to play ball a little bit. This is not 1962. You just don't own their rights in perpetuity, right? Like you gotta work with them a little bit.
There is nothing in 2019 that will destroy your franchise faster than trying to prove a point. Okay? It's not worth it.
Say it again.
You cannot try to prove a point in 2019. It is stupid methodology. It's archaic. It's old. You are behind the game when you try to prove a point. We're the smart ones in the room. We got to prove a point. We got to prove a point here. So go ahead, prove a point and injure yourself. Prove a point and be the Washington Redskins. Prove a point and have other front offices
and be the
sitting there
Bengals.
staring. Yeah, exactly.
And hold on to AJ Green.
Yeah.
Why is AJ Green still a Bengal?
Thank you.
He turns 32 next July.
Right. Thank you.
Why?
Yeah, you know who would have liked to have had AJ Green? The New Orleans Saints.
31 other teams? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
The New Orleans Saints really would have made a run at AJ Green, but instead, no, we're the Bengals. We're going to prove a point and keep AJ Green and show that we're sticking with him. Congratulations, man. That's why you are.
Way to go.
Leaps and bounds. You're right in the thick of it for that number one pick. And, this is just so ridiculous.